so many of us that she cut ties with the royal family, yet she keeps using this royal title as she sells jams.
This morning, Harry and Meghan stepping out together in London for the first time since announcing their very public split from the royal family.
Harry and Meghan, they're at it again. Another faux royal tour. Really, we've had quite...
The most dangerous problem facing Harry and Meghan isn't bad press or online hate. Stop everything. This story is not about feelings, fame or family drama. It's about money, records, and what happens when paperwork becomes impossible to explain. It's that a growing number of people are no longer listening to their words, they're demanding documents. And when a celebrity story shifts from emotion to accounting, the rules change instantly. Narratives stop working. Sympathy stops working. Only proof matters. Here is the direct point no one wants to say out loud. Harry and Meghan's post-royal world appears to depend heavily on charitable and institutional structures, and those structures are now under intense public suspicion. There is no official confirmation of asset freezes. There is no public IRS announcement. But the panic online isn't coming from certainty, it's coming from doubt. And doubt is lethal when your entire brand is built on trust. This moment feels different because of timing. For years, criticism followed them like background noise. Loud, constant, but survivable. This time, the noise changed pitch. Suddenly, people aren't arguing about interviews or documentaries. They're asking where filings are, why certain documents aren't easy to access, and why financial explanations always seem delayed, indirect, or emotional instead of factual. That shift alone is enough to trigger alarm inside any organisation, guilty or not. Once money enters the conversation, everything accelerates. People stop debating motives and start questioning math. And math does not care about trauma, titles, or intent. Numbers are either reconciled or they are not. Expenses are either allowed or they are challenged. When enough people start asking, "Show the paperwork," the story stops belonging to publicists and starts belonging to regulators, donors, and institutions. That is why the sudden wave of UK return, security concerns, and relocation necessity headlines raised eyebrows. On their own, none of these are shocking. Together, they look strategic. To supporters, this is a family protecting itself under pressure. To critics, it looks like repositioning while scrutiny builds. Both interpretations can exist at the same time, and that ambiguity is exactly what keeps the story alive. Charities are especially sensitive because they operate under a different social contract. Tax advantages come with transparency obligations. Public trust is not optional, it is the currency. When a charity is tied to famous founders, every expense becomes symbolic.
Once Meghan treated as an HRH, that's the most realistic on the list where you can go, I can see these.
Security costs are not just security costs. Travel is not just travel. Staffing is not just staffing. Everything becomes a moral argument about intent versus benefit. Critics argue that when founders live extremely privileged lives, it becomes difficult for the public to accept that large operational expenses are purely mission-focused. Supporters counter that global visibility requires global protection and professional infrastructure. The truth often lives somewhere in between, but social media does not reward nuance. It rewards outrage, certainty, and repetition. This is how suspicion grows, even without confirmed wrongdoing. Transparency gaps, real or perceived, act like oxygen. The longer they remain unaddressed in clear, boring, document-driven ways, the more speculation fills the space. Silence becomes suspicious. Vague statements become evidence of hiding. Emotional appeals become deflection in the eyes of critics. Another reason this moment feels volatile is because previous controversies appeared to resolve without lasting consequences. That history creates a belief, fair or not, that accountability is optional. When people think rules bend for certain figures, they wait for the moment when bending stops. Every delay feels like confirmation that something is wrong, even if it isn't. Financial pressure compounds everything. Brand deals that underperform expectations change calculations quickly. When projected revenue fails to arrive, dependence on institutional funding becomes more visible. Visibility invites scrutiny, scrutiny invites investigation, and investigation invites fear, even among compliant organisations, because investigations slow operations, freeze momentum, and scare partners. This is why donors matter so much in this conversation. Donors do not donate to drama. They donate to clarity. Once donors start hesitating, charities feel it immediately. Programs stall, staff morale drops, long-term plans collapse, even rumours can trigger these effects. The damage does not wait for proof. Security narratives play a crucial role here because they are one of the few arguments that shut down questioning instantly. Safety claims discourage criticism by reframing scrutiny as cruelty, and once a move is justified as protection, it becomes untouchable. No one wants to be seen as minimizing risk to children or family. Whether intentional or instinctive, this framing is powerful. Geography also matters more than people admit. Different countries bring different media cultures, different public expectations, and different institutional pressures. Moving does not erase responsibility, but it can change the temperature, it can slow the cycle, it can buy time. Strategy does not require wrongdoing, only awareness of how systems work. Public fatigue is another invisible driver. Audiences eventually tire of unresolved narratives. Sympathy erodes when people feel they are hearing the same grievances without closure. What once sounded brave begins to sound repetitive. What once felt vulnerable begins to feel transactional. And when goodwill fades, skepticism rushes in to replace it. This is why documentation matters more than messaging at this stage. Messaging seeks belief. Documentation delivers certainty. And certainty is the only thing that stops speculation. Not interviews, not statements, not emotional appeals, just clean, accessible records that answer questions without commentary. If everything is compliant, the resolution will be quiet and boring, papers will clear, databases will update, attention will move on. But if inconsistencies exist, even technical ones, they will grow louder precisely because they are technical. Systems do not ignore unresolved discrepancies, they escalate them. Power rarely disappears in dramatic moments. It erodes through friction, through delayed approvals, through partnerships that quietly withdraw, through unanswered emails, through funding that suddenly comes with conditions. By the time the public notices, the leverage is already gone. This is why people are watching so closely right now. Not because they know the ending, but because they recognise the pattern. Stories that start with paperwork do not end with apologies. They end with resolutions, one way or another. Supporters and critics are talking past each other because they are operating on different timelines. One side says, "There's no proof." The other says, "That's why we're waiting." Both are technically correct, but waiting itself creates pressure, and pressure forces movement. The uncomfortable truth is that image alone cannot sustain an operation indefinitely. Staff cannot be paid with narratives. Security cannot be funded with goodwill. Infrastructure requires cash flow, approvals, and trust. When any one of those weakens, the whole structure shakes. If this story escalates, it will not escalate through leaks or gossip. It will escalate through confirmations, through filings accepted or rejected, through audits opened or closed, through statements backed by evidence instead of emotion. That phase is quieter but far more decisive. So when people ask whether this looks like a calculated move or a desperate scramble, the only honest answer is uncertainty. But uncertainty itself is meaningful. It tells us the system is under stress. And stressed systems reveal truths faster than calm ones.